let's talk about the worst smut I read last year. Erotica is always kind of a dicey genre to go into. Most smut nowadays seems to be self-published. And while that is a great thing, I think it allows so many people to put their crazy ass sexual fantasies out there, and I think that's amazing. I think that if these books had to get traditionally published, we would not see most of this stuff hit the bookshelves, because a lot of it isn't quite tasteful, especially a lot of the stuff I enjoy in the darker romance category. So I love that I can get it through Kindle Unlimited. But it also means I read a lot of things that are bad. Sometimes that's just the risk you have to take. I also happened to read a lot of stuff outside my comfort zone last year. I started my series 50 Shades of Smut, where I dive into different subgenres of erotica, and because of that, I tend to pick up stuff that I might not necessarily be into. So today we're going to talk about the 7 worst smut books that I read last year. Number 7 is Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa. This was actually a paranormal romance book that I read for my BookTube Made Me Buy It series, and this one was recommended by Becca in the Books. Now, she loves paranormal books in a way that I don't, so I think that definitely has something to do with this. The other thing it has to do with is the fact that I don't like mushy shit. If things fall too hard in the romance category instead of the smut category, I'm bound not to like it. This is a fae dark romance. There are 2 separate timelines in this, the past and the present. In the past, our main character is first getting introduced to this character named the Bargainer. He makes deals with different people and they then owe him. She makes so many deals with him, and this comes to haunt her in the present day. Throughout the past, we kind of see her slowly falling for him. She is young and naive, and he is much, much older than her and knows that this is a bad situation that maybe he should get himself out of because it could be considered very inappropriate. In the present, he comes to collect. I thought that sounded fun because I thought the way he was going to collect would be in sexual favors. That is not what happened. And I kind of lost interest right there, but I continued forth and regretted it. Even though we have the past storyline where we see them fall in love, it still somehow feels like insta-love. The way he comes back into her life and she's like, no, I don't want to deal with you because you broke my heart. But then she gets over it in like 3 seconds and they go from like hating each other to instantly mushy. It made me want to vomit. I have no interest in that. There is a dark storyline in the fae world featuring some sort of thorn king or something that I actually found interesting because the horror elements that they brought into that storyline I really liked. But they would kind of forget about that storyline for large periods of time. And so by the time they would come back to it, I was like, well, we haven't talked about this in 100 pages, so I no longer care. It just wasn't for me. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad book. That's why it's at the end of this list instead of the beginning. But as soon as we talk about soulmates, I'm no longer interested. It was just a bit too slow for me, as well as being a bit too cutesy. There's someone at my door. Number 6 is The Life That Mattered by Jewel E. Ann. This book is very hard to explain because honestly, the big part of the plot doesn't happen until like 60% of the way through the book, at least. Mostly this book is just about 2 people who meet randomly and fall in love. And you follow them kind of throughout their relationship for many years. It's hard to say anything else about this book without giving away spoilers, and to be quite honest, I don't know if this book is worth the trouble anyways. The characters acted so wooden and weird that they just didn't feel real throughout the entire book. I knew that this had possibly some sort of paranormal aspect, at least that's what I'd heard. And so I kept spending the entire book thinking, oh, he must be an alien, because that's why his dialogue is so fucking strange. That's why he's so picture perfect, is because he is an extraterrestrial, and that's what the reveal is gonna be. That's not it, or I wouldn't be telling you it. The actual answer was even weirder, quite frankly, and didn't explain any of the problems in this book. There's also a storyline involving the main character's best friend and her husband that never really gets resolved. There are just some weird things where he's a politician, and as he goes throughout his career, he's becoming more of a douchebag, and his wife, who was once this vibrant, alive human being, just gets more and more kind of brought down by him. because she has to play this like servitude Stepford wife. And then there's like some weird sexual tension between all four of them, I guess, but nothing ever really comes of it. And so I was kind of just left feeling like this book was entirely set up for the second novel. That's never how I want to feel. I don't want to have to read a second novel in order to get any sort of enjoyment from a series. Nothing happened in this. It was so boring. I couldn't connect to any of the characters because they all felt completely inauthentic. Like, all of them felt so plastic and fake. The only interesting moments within them was the sexual tension between all four of them, and I don't trust this author enough to believe that that's going to be paid off in the second book, because this is the only thing I've read from her, so not a favorite. Number 5 was Unconventional by Rebecca Royce. This was a reverse harem college romance. It's about a girl who ends up having to leave her dorm, and she ends up staying with these 3 guys in their frat house. This just all comes down to the writing. It was horrible. Like, it was just... This did not feel like an author. This is one of those things that you could tell was self-published from possibly someone who's never written before. I don't know if that's true, but that's how it felt. It was bad. The 3 men had nothing to distinguish each other from one another. Their sex scenes all felt identical. Like, there was just truly nothing going on in this novel. I don't even have more to say about it. It was that boring. Like, it was so boring that I can't even come up with interesting things to hate about it. The 3 love interests just continually talk about how amazing the main character is, and yet we are never once shown her being amazing. They talk about how funny and smart she is. I don't think I saw her craft one joke throughout the entire book. She has never had a witty line of dialogue. Like, she was so boring. So, didn't get it, won't continue reading on, wouldn't recommend it to my worst enemy. Number 4 is going to be a controversial pick, and that is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I hated this book so much. My experience with Penelope Douglas has been an interesting one because everything I read from her is either 4 stars, like Corrupt, Bully, Credence, or it's just like 2-star, bottom of the barrel, absolutely hate it. I always give it 2 stars because her writing is good, and so I don't believe she deserves a 1 star, but like, I hate the books so much. These books are the ones that are memorable to me in my hatred, and that is Punk 57 and Birthday Girl. And that really comes down to the fact that the characters are so detestable, yet think they're good people. I'm okay with terrible characters as long as they are self-aware that they're terrible, as long as the author is aware that they're terrible. My problem is characters who act like total fucking dickheads, and yet I'm supposed to believe they're a romantic hero, or they're a main character I'm supposed to root for. And that's what Birthday Girl was. This main character ends up having to live with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's father. Her boyfriend's a dick, and so she ends up breaking up with him, but still living with his dad. And considering this is a smut novel, you can guess where this goes. Her boyfriend was not a big enough dick to make any of the rest of it make sense. The way this woman acted. We are led to believe in this book that her development arc is going to be about her fighting for her worth because she's been with this guy who treated her like crap. So we need to see her stand up for herself. And apparently standing up for herself means insisting that this guy put her before his son. There is no instance where I think that's okay. They try to fight off whatever feelings they have for one another, so when they finally do hook up, and she immediately gives him this ultimatum, it just seems crazy to me. The dad has some ridiculous backwards view of how to treat women. He constantly thinks about how he doesn't want the main character to dress, the places he doesn't want her to work, the ways he doesn't want her to act, etc., etc. And the only reason he believes he doesn't have a right to tell her these things or demand these things is because they're not dating. Like, if they were dating, this would be totally fine for him to control her every move, I guess. She continues to think these things are okay because he's old school, despite the fact that he's like 35. Not old school, not even old. I just hated both of them so much. Also, the way both of them judged the sister who's a stripper. Gross. They're despicable people. They totally deserve each other. I'm glad they ended up together. I just never want to read about them again. Or think about them again. Now, number 3 on this list is Hush Hush by Lucia Franco. This is about a girl who becomes a sex worker to make money. That's basically it, and then she falls in love with the client. I really just wanted a book that was positive about the sex worker industry, and that is not what this gave me. This girl judged the shit out of her best friend for being a sex worker. The hypocrisy there was alarming, but of course, she's not like her because she's planning on getting out of it. She's doing it for a reason, to pay for her schooling, so it's different. I didn't particularly like the love interest. He's definitely got that suave billionaire energy about him, and that's never been my thing. Overall, he seemed like an okay dude, mostly, until we got to about the 75% mark where he acts like a total dickwad and treats her like shit for being a sex worker. But I guess it's okay because she looks down on sex workers too, so I guess they can bond over it. There's another love interest in this, kind of. You know he's not going to be the guy she ends up with. You know exactly how that storyline is going to play out, that once he finds out she's a sex worker, he's going to flip out and we all get to like root for her while she kicks him out of the apartment. But I don't understand how his actions are any worse than the actions of the actual love interest. It is never really explained, other than she just loves his dick, therefore it's fine. Hated it. Hated everything about it. Number 2 is Forbidden by 7 Row. Now, I was fully expecting to hate this going into it, and so my expectations were pretty much met. This is about a 17-year-old girl who decides to have sex with her father figure, her uncle figure, and her father figure's best friend. Now, they're not actually blood related, but he has raised her for most of her life, so do with that what you will. This was just porn, which, nothing against that, clearly, but there was no plot, there were no characters, these were just random porn scenes shoved together, and it was uncomfortable, to say the least. You can't even buy this on Amazon. I had to buy it from her website for the vlog I did. What I will say is the book ends with a feminist message, which I think is fucking hilarious, so it might have been worth it for that alone. What I will say is 7 Rue is actually pretty decent at writing sex scenes. She writes them very bluntly because, like I said, this is very much porn. So if she ever wrote an actual book with plot that didn't include incest, I would probably read it. I think these sex scenes would be hot if they didn't use the word daddy so much. And my number 1 worst smut book that I read last year was In Peace Lies Havoc by Ammo Jones. How can someone make a sex circus boring? I think this is a thing that a lot of authors do sometimes, in which they make things so vague that it loses all interest. There really isn't a lot of plot to even give you other than this girl joins a sex circus, she's a dancer, and she gets interested in one of the men there. The author just beat around the bush so much. She wanted to include intrigue and mystery that it just became too vague. There was nothing ever actually happening. It just felt like we were having the same weird conversation over and over again. Nobody would ever actually tell her anything. They would have this push and pull thing, which can be done in a sexy, hot way, the tension. But I didn't feel any tension between these characters because, quite frankly, I didn't care about these characters. I didn't know anything about them because none of them would have a full conversation with each other. There was a plot that happened around the 80% mark. Some things were revealed and they were so interesting. But the book was over by that point. There was nowhere to go with it. It was a bit insane of a plot too, so it would have been nice to see that earlier on. Also, if you're gonna introduce a sex circus, you better show me some of the stuff in the sex circus. We got nothing. I'm telling you, you could read the first couple chapters of this book and then just skip, like right near the end, and you would not miss anything in the middle because nothing happens. Nothing really develops. They just go around and round in circles. Those were my worst smut books of the year. You know, I don't even really regret reading them because at least most of them were interesting, even if I hated them. I think that's the fun thing about smut. I do want to do another video talking about the worst smut of all time that I've read. I won't include any of these because I don't want to double up, but stick around for that video. I'll probably film it in like 2 months or something. I hope you like this video and I hope you'll come back in soon. Bye.